Okay, everybody, what I wanted to do for this video was to go over the Part 2 section of the 2013 state exam. So in other videos, I went over the Part 1 section. This, I want to go over the Part 2 section. And when we go through the Part 2 section, this is going to be a little different because this is the short answer section of the exam. And what I want you to do as I explain the answers is to keep track of your points and add up all your points as you go. When we get to the end, which probably won't be in this video, it'll probably take a couple of videos to get through this. I want you to add up all your points and then figure out what your total score would have been as a percentage, and that should give you a pretty good idea of how you would do on the real exam. So if we take a look at this first example, this first problem, we have some cups with some soil, and we have some seeds, and we have different amounts of water. So for the first one, it says to identify the independent manipulated variable. Now, this is the thing that the person is changing. This is what the person does in the experiment. This is what the person is changing. This is what the person does in the experiment. And in this case, what we're doing is changing the amount of water and then looking for some sort of change, maybe in growth. Okay, so for this one, it needed to be something about the amount of water. You also could have just said water, and that would be fine, but it had to be something about the water here. Most of these problems are worth 1 point, and the points are in parentheses over here at the end of the question. So I'm going to put a tally mark there. That was a 1 credit response. If you put something else like sunlight or something like that, that doesn't count. And then it asks you for some constants, and there's lots of different things that you could put here. You could put type of seed, you could put type of soil, amount of soil, and there's a whole variety of answers. You could put number of seeds, amount of sunlight, amount of soil, type of soil, depth of seeds in the soil, type of seed, size of seed, type of container, size of container, same temperature, lots of different things. The common mistake here, though, there are a lot of constants you could put here, but one things that you really can't put here is amount of water, because that's the one thing we're changing, and that can't be a constant if we're changing it. But otherwise, that's about it. So we get 1 point, you get 1 credit for 2 answers. So you get 1 point for 2 answers. Again, I want you to keep track of your points, and I think putting little tally marks next to the questions is a good idea. I think it'll help you add up the points towards the end. Okay, here we have a question about the rock cycle, and this is something that you probably did back in 6th grade. You might not remember doing it, but I'm sure you did at some point. And we have 3 different types of rocks. Sedimentary rocks, which are made up of things like sand and gravel. And here's a sedimentary rock right here, and we can see that it's made up of bits of sand and gravel and pebbles that are all stuck together. Over time, the sand and sediment, soil, pebbles harden together to form a rock, and that's a sedimentary rock. Igneous rocks are formed from lava cooling, and the metamorphic rocks form from heat and pressure. This is something we'll talk about more in another video. But it says basalt is a rock that is formed when magma from volcanic eruptions cools and solidifies. So for this one, it would be an igneous rock. And then it says identify one process that causes the metamorphism of an igneous rock into a metamorphic rock. This is basically one big flowchart. And if we find igneous rocks over here, and we follow the metamorphism arrow over towards metamorphic rock, our processes are here, heat and or pressure. So your answers here, you have some options. You could have said heat, and that would be fine. You could say pressure, or you could say both of those things, heat and pressure. Okay, so you could say one of these things or both of those, and that would get you the point. And you would get those right off of this arrow over here. Those are both 1 point questions. Most of the questions on the test are 1 point. Occasionally there are some 2 point questions. For this one, this is okay, question 50. Okay, we got, this is a common thing that they often put on these exams. Solubility means basically to dissolve. And we're talking about dissolving some chemicals in water. Here's water temperature, and here's the amount of those chemicals being dissolved in the water. So for this one, it's saying determine the number of grams of NH4Cl. So we're talking about this dashed line. The other line, the HCl, we can essentially ignore, not part of the problem. And this is that will dissolve 100 grams in 100 grams of water at 25 degrees Celsius. So what it's asking for is at a temperature of 25, how much of the NH4Cl would dissolve. So to figure that out, I could estimate by drawing a line up to the NH4Cl line and reading across. And it should be about 40. Now, as far as acceptable answers go, if you were between 39 and 41, that's okay. If you had 38 or 42 or anything else, that would not be okay. So if you were between 39 and 41, you could give yourself the credit there. You would get the point. Okay, for the next problem, it's about shrinking glaciers. Glaciers are losing thickness over time. They're losing ice with time. Now, let's take a look at the question. Okay, so it says, during which 5-year interval in the data table did the glacial thickness in meters change the most? Now, for this problem, the answer, they give you a little bit of range. You could say, well, it's got to be between 2000 and 2005. Or if you wrote this the opposite way, that's fine too. If you wrote 2005 and 2000, that's okay too. Doesn't make a difference. But if you had between 2000 and 2005 in either direction, that would give you the point. And again, keep track of the points. I'm going to ask you to add up all your points and then turn this into Mr. Abate when you're done. Here we had to plot a graph about glacial ice and time. And I'm going to just put this graph, this is the answer key, and you can see what the graph should look like. And it says, allow credit if a symbol other than an X is used to plot the data. So in the directions it says to use an X, what that means is if you use circles or dots, that's okay. That doesn't really matter. No bar graphs, no line graphs, and it should be the same. So it says allow 1 credit if the center of 5 or 6 X's are within the circles shown and correctly connected with a line that passes within the circles. You're allowed to have 1 point being a little off. You need to have a line connecting them. If you don't have the line, you don't get the credit. Okay, so you've got to have your points plotted with a line connecting them. It needs to look like this. If it looks like this, then you get the credit. Okay, so you get 1 point for making your graph. And again, your graph needs to look basically like this. Okay, here's 53, and we've got a food web. And it says, explain why the number of squid, so here's squid up here, might change if there were a significant decrease in the number of cod. So here we've got the cod, and there's a variety of acceptable answers here. It says the squid population could decrease because there would be fewer cod for them to eat. And I think that's the most obvious answer, that with fewer cod, there's going to be less food for the squid. But I'll read all of the examples, and you don't have to have something that's exactly this, it's just got to have the same idea. So it says the squid population would increase because there would be more small animals and krill for them to eat. The idea in that answer is if the squid isn't eating krill and the small animals, then there's going to be an increase in the population of cod. There would be less food for elephant seals, so they would eat more squid and the squid population would decrease. There would be less food for the penguins, so they would eat more squid, so the squid population would go down. The squid and cod both eat krill and small animals. Cod is a food source for squid. Organisms in a food web are interdependent. any of those things would have been okay. And I know I read those kind of quickly, but remember, you could always go backwards in the video if you missed anything. So I think that the most obvious answer is that fewer cod, less food for the squid, but that any one of those would have worked. If you had one of those or something similar to that, you could get the 1 point. It says to identify an omnivore. That would be an animal that eats both animals and plants. And you could tell by the arrows. So you have a couple of options here. You could have put cod, or you could have put krill. Okay, you only needed one, but either of them are okay, and that'll get you the point for 54. And again, keep track of those points. I'm going to ask you to add them all up when we get to the end. Okay, here we've got the nervous system. You touch a hot pot, and this is kind of an interesting thing that people do. It's a defense mechanism. If you touch a hot pot, you automatically pull your hand away without even thinking about it. Your spinal cord recognizes that you're being burned and automatically tells your hand, your muscles, to pull away from the hot stove. The signal never reaches your brain, or it reaches your brain delayed. The priority is to get your hand out of the burning situation. So it skips over that step of going to the brain first, and then gets you out of harm's way faster. So it says cause and effect. The cause would be touching the hot stove. And the effect would be pulling the hand away. And you don't have to use this exact wording, but it's got to be the same kind of idea. And you get 1 point for both of those. And then it says explain the purpose of a quick body response like pulling a hand away from a hot stove. Well, it simply gets you out of danger faster. Removes danger quickly. You could say these responses help protect parts of a person's body. These responses keep a person from being burned, injured. You could just say safety, protection, something like that. Those are all 1 point. And again, you know, your responses are going to vary a little bit. You don't have to have the exact wording. It just has to be the same idea. Okay, I'll probably finish this page up, and then I'll split this up into probably 3 videos, I think. Here we have some rock layers with fossils. Oldest rock layers are going to be on the bottom. Youngest layers towards the top. And it says which 2 fossils are found in 2 different rock layers. For this one, your answer could be or needs to be Neospirifer and Spirifer. Okay, so it needs to be both of those. The order doesn't matter. You could switch the order around. That makes no difference. For 58, it's asking you about the fossils are considered to be one of the youngest. Okay, so here we've got this one up here, and it's in the top layer. So your answer needed to be about it being in the top layer, the upper layer, something about it being towards the top. And then it says to circle the class of rock that most likely includes A, B, and C. Okay, these would be sedimentary rocks, just like this one before. Sand, gravel, mud, getting hard over time. If it were an igneous rock, those animal remains would be melted. If it was metamorphic, the heat and pressure would destroy the fossils, and they wouldn't be left anymore. Okay, so that's up to 59. I'm going to stop the video here because I've got some other things I need to do. But I'm going to divide this up into at least 2 videos, maybe 3. And again, I want you to keep track of all those points. And I'm going to have you tally up all your points, figure out what your score would be, and then turn that in for me to take a look at when I return. So I'll be back in another video.